Host today's webinar, and recording is in progress. So just so everybody knows that the presentation will be recorded today. It is my honor to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker today, Ryan Hartman, the CEO of Worldview. Now, Ryan has spent more than 20 years working unmanned systems and remote sensing, including leading InSitu as the president and CEO and serving in technical leadership roles at Raytheon. At Worldview, he's helping transition the Stratolite platform from breakthrough technology to real operations, focused on long duration stratospheric flight for sensing and for communications. Like many of us, he's a veteran of both the Air Force and of the Navy, a graduate of our alma mater, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and also serves on the board of the Northeast UAS Aerospace Integration Research Alliance. That is a mouthful. And that organization is there to lead national efforts to integrate unmanned systems into the national airspace system. And we've seen examples recently of why that is so important. We're glad to have him with us today. And without any further ado, I hand it off to Embry-Riddle alma mater alumnus Ryan Hartman.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. And it's great to be with you all today. I have a presentation to share, but before I get into that, I just wanted to set the stage, for why this is an important subject for me. So as Eric shared, I'm a veteran of both the Air Force and the Navy. And I want to just focus a little bit on my Navy career. When I was in the Navy, I was introduced to the idea of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance and remote sensing. I flew P3s, and P3s were primarily used for anti-submarine warfare, where we would fly out over the open ocean and try and locate submarines, which was a very challenging mission set. But the mission set that really caught my eye was the counter-narcotics missions that we would operate in the Caribbean and the Gulf of, at the time, the Gulf of Mexico and the Eastern Pacific. And I learned firsthand the importance of quality intelligence, both from, operating a platform, but I'd say just as importantly, how that intelligence ends up in the hands of decision makers. And that, set me off on a career specifically in intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance. I did a lot of that at Raytheon. Then had the absolute pleasure of being the CEO at InSitu, which was also run by an alum in sorts, and that Dr. Steve Sliwa, who at one time was president of Embry-Riddle, he was leading InSitu at the time and recruited me into InSitu to lead that company. But at InSitu, the thing that struck me most was how quality intelligence could save lives. There's a number of stories that were shared, and I'll probably get into some of those stories as I go through my presentation. But suffice it to say that I've been a long time, I'll say, student of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, both from the consumer's point of view and from a collection point of view, the assets that collect intelligence and distribute that to decision makers. So with that, I'll share this, just a quick thumbs up that you all can see this from somebody, if that's okay.
We can see it.
Great. All right, I'm going to start with a little video here to introduce Worldview. What you're seeing here is a lot of data and video captured from the worldview satellite on a number of different missions. And the primary thing we do is full motion video from mostly in electro-optical, but also in infrared. We do open ocean surveillance. We do surveillance of critical infrastructure that we see here. Really the business that we're in is to collect data and then sell that data, process it into intelligence and deliver it into possible. All right, so I want to start with why we exist as a company. It's very important to me that when I lead a company that we have a purpose behind what it is that we do. And here at Worldview, it's that we exist to inspire, create, and explore new perspectives for a radically improved future. And if I break that down from a remote sensing and ISR perspective, our mission is to create very unique perspectives. And this comes through creating high resolution data sets coupled with our ability to do what we call station keeping. Station keeping being where we can stay over an area for a long period of time. And then when we couple that with analytics, where we take those raw data sets like imagery or radar data, and we apply analytics to it, we can provide for our customers a radically improved future. And the real intent here for us is to save lives and avert disasters. And this speaks to what I mentioned earlier. That I've had a firsthand experience with the importance of using intelligence products to save lives. Leading in situ, we operated most of our systems in Afghanistan and Iraq. We operated them off of U.S. Navy ships and foreign navies off of their ships, and operated in a lot of very remote and desolate places around the world. And I'll share one of those stories, around how intelligence can radically improve one's future. So when we were operating unmanned systems in support of the U.S. Marine Corps, there was a period of time where we were operating out of Fallujah, Iraq. And I'll share the very first mission that we ever did in Fallujah, Iraq. So we had launched an unmanned aircraft called a Scan Eagle, and we were supporting the 1MEF, the First Marine Expeditionary Force. And they had never experienced real-time high resolution imagery being delivered to them via these remote terminals. And Marines were maneuvering inside of Fallujah, and there was a group of 6 Marines that were behind a corner of a building. They were getting ready to maneuver around the building, and the Scan Eagle operator noticed that there was a sniper on top of a building that had direct line of sight to that corner where they were getting ready to round. The Scan Eagle operator alerted them that there was a sniper, and they made the very quick decision to obviously not go around that corner and find another way to go. But after that mission, what the commander of the 1MEF told in situ was that data saved 2-3 lives in an instant, and that really transformed the way I look at intelligence. That if you can collect intelligence that supports real-time decision making, ultimately you can deliver a radically improved future. And so here at Worldview, we're taking that same principle around collecting imagery and data and turning it into intelligence and informing decisions in a real time in order to support our customers. So I'll go through a little bit about what we do here at Worldview. So we are, as I mentioned, an imagery and data services business in support of the defense community, the intelligence community, and commercial customers. And what we operate is what we call a stratolite. This is a stratospheric balloon that operates in the stratosphere, with a suite of payloads. We operate with electro-optical payloads, infrared payloads, radar, hyperspectral, and we collect data on very long duration flights. We fly for 45 days or more at a time. And on any given mission, we're collecting data and imagery for joint operations, national security, maritime surveillance, border and immigration, critical infrastructure like oil and gas pipelines or power lines. We support disaster management like any kind of significant weather event, wildfires, bushfires, and then in support of maritime surveillance, also monitoring portways and waterways. And when we collect that imagery, we collect it as raw data, and then we have a suite of analytics tool sets that take that raw imagery, turn it into something of significance to our customers, and then deliver that processed data set. And then how we do it is through stratospheric balloons. So our system, Stratolite, it operates between 50 and 75,000 feet. And the way that the system works is you see a large balloon here in the middle. That's our lift balloon. So our lift balloon enables us to get into the stratosphere and operate in the stratosphere. And then you see a smaller balloon below that. That's a ballast balloon. We pressurize that ballast balloon with air. And because air weighs more than helium or hydrogen, you create mass and you can descend the balloon. The reason that this is important is that in the stratosphere, there are 4 directional winds at different altitudes. So if you can precisely control your altitude, you can freely navigate in the stratosphere without having to use any propulsion. And that's the uniqueness of what we do. There's no other system like it in the world. We have a patent around using this lift balloon and a separate ballast balloon. And it provides the ability to collect very high resolution imagery and high resolution data sets. As an example, the imagery that we collect is 5 times better than any imagery you can get from a satellite. So we collect 5 to 7 centimeter imagery versus 30 centimeter imagery from satellites. The best you could possibly produce on a satellite is 25 centimeters. So you can get an idea that it's very high quality imagery. And then when you couple this with station keeping, and this is the ability to stay over a confined area for a long duration of time, the metric we use is that we can stay in a 40-kilometer radius area for 10 continuous days. And so that gives our customers the ability to monitor an area and do things like what we call pattern of life monitoring, understanding what's happening in an environment like a city, understanding the interactions that take place between people, understanding the comings and goings of vehicles from buildings and things like that. As I mentioned, our system flies for 45 days. Our longest flight was actually 49 days. And the other unique thing about a stratospheric balloon is it's quite configurable and versatile, meaning we can put a number of different types of payloads on the system. We can carry very large payloads. The largest that we've ever carried into the stratosphere was a 10,000 kilogram payload to 100,000 feet. And so this is the versatility and the configurability of stratospheric balloons. You can do a lot of very unique things and carry a lot of unique payloads with a stratospheric balloon. So that kind of sets the stage for worldview as we are today. But what we've noticed is that the intelligence market, the data market is starved. One of the things I've learned in my career is data is the new oil. And what I mean by that is that it doesn't matter how much data you produce, there's always a consumer of that data. And specifically in the remote sensing and the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance marketplace, there's always something new to be observed and processed and ingested into a decision-making portal. So I want to talk a little bit about why this is the case. So our customers today, they need actionable intelligence. The modern mission today requires intelligence that is timely and actionable. Delivering raw data to to a customer means that when they take delivery of that data, they have to process it to turn it into something that's actionable. And there's a big gap in the market today where most of the platforms produce raw data, but they don't take it to the next level of putting it into an actionable form. So an example of that is monitoring open oceans and identifying boats and identifying them as an adversary or just a commercial operator of a boat. Being able to combine intelligence from other sources using AI and using other analytics enables customers to take delivery of actionable intelligence. The other thing that we have learned is that there is a rapid evolution of the threat. The threats evolve quickly. The response times are shortening, and there's demand for intelligence, what we say at machine speed, right? So instead of an intelligence person taking delivery of imagery and trying to interpret that imagery, delivering that imagery coupled with lots of other sources of intelligence, that's done at machine speed. It's done in near real time, and it's done in a way that presents to an intelligence person data that they can understand and act on quickly. In addition to that, there is an absolute need for life-saving ISR applications. So using intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance in critical scenarios like maritime interdiction, battlefield awareness, kind of like the story I shared with In Situ, or even disaster response, it saves lives. And so if you're focused on ultimately how do I collect data and then process that data with a focus on saving lives, it changes the way that you operate your systems, and it changes the tools you use in order to deliver something that is actionable. And then lastly, there is a significant shift in integrated systems. I like to think of this as, what are the different domains within which data is collected? There's the surface domain, which is ships and unmanned surface vehicles. There's the air domain, which is things like UAVs or manned platforms that are collecting data. There's this new domain, the stratospheric domain, and then the space domain. They all have a different role to play, and they collect different types of data, and they operate for different durations. A UAV can operate, anywhere from minutes to many hours. Something like a drone will operate for up to an hour. An unmanned aircraft, like a Scan Eagle that I mentioned, can operate for up to 27 hours. Manned aircraft operate, in 10 to 15-hour increments. Our platform, the stratospheric balloon, operates for many days. And then space assets are enduring. They all, both through the time that they're on station, coupled with the type of data they collect, it's all different. But what we're seeing is that there is a need to integrate the fragmented data collected in these different domains into an integrated, insights-driven system that empowers instant decisions. So there's real-world mission urgency as well. So we do things like dark ship monitoring. And what does that mean? Well, there are ships that evade detection, or they provide false reports of who they are, where they came from, and where they're going. There's a system that ships are required to use called AIS, Automated Information System, where what they're supposed to be doing is reporting all of those things that I just mentioned. And what they'll do is they'll report something different, and they'll report their current location is different than where they actually are. And so if you can collect those AIS reports and then compare that to what am I actually observing, what you can ascertain is when somebody is reporting something false. And that's called dark ship monitoring. There's warfighter intelligence, so real-time intelligence that enables warfighters to avoid or coordinate safe maneuvers in contested areas, much like what I mentioned earlier. Then there's wildfire response. And wildfire response actually happens much earlier than a fire actually starting. So by collecting data and processing that data, you can look at things like the health of the flora and fauna. What is the health of a forest coupled with the weather and the atmospheric conditions, that create a likely scenario of a significant wildfire. So you start there, collecting the data, processing that data, and then pre-positioning assets when you find that there's an area that is likely to be a very significant wildfire. And then when a wildfire is in process, using remote sensing and intelligence gathering systems to ultimately identify hotspots, or employ fire behavioralists that can predict what a fire is going to do, so that you can again pre-deploy teams and assets to contain a wildfire more rapidly and protect resources. And then lastly, there's a need for rapid ISR evolution. The traditional ISR workflow that we call TC-PED, which is task, collect, process, exploit, and disseminate, those workflows are far too slow. What we're seeing is that from the time that a system is tasked to the time a system is collecting data and then processing that data, and ultimately getting to the point where you're disseminating that data, it's measured in hours and days. When what our customers need is data that's collected from, after being tasked, collecting that data and disseminating that data in minutes. Hours and days is just too slow. Lives are at stake when you do that. Critical infrastructure is at stake when you do that. And so applying different tools to the ISR workflows ultimately enables a faster decision. I'll talk a little bit about the disjointed ecosystem. So, when I talk about the process of tasking, there's fragmented ISR operations. So currently, ISR relies on separate providers for UAVs, for satellites, for balloons like ours, which ultimately creates operational complexity. If a UAV is being tasked separate from a stratospheric balloon, it's nearly impossible for us to coordinate collecting and processing to shorten timelines. And so this fragmented approach to tasking is where it all starts. You start seeing, tasking taking many minutes, if not hours. And then that just is kind of like an airline where you have a delay at the beginning. It buffers delays into the system and ultimately creates delays measured in hours and days. Then there's data format challenges. And although there are standards related to what format you are to collect data and output that data, there's a different standard for space than there is for the stratosphere, than there is for unmanned aircraft. And so finding a way to create standardized and I'll say automated integration of dissimilar formats significantly increases the speed at which you can process data. Then there's inefficient workflow management. Decision makers, face inefficiencies due to the managing multiple workflows. So they've got a workflow related to UAVs, a workflow related to stratospheric balloons, a workflow related to space assets. And then lastly, there's a focus on collection over insight. Today, customers focus on collecting data and then worrying about integrating that data over time. And that, again, creates time ingested into the system for making insights and ultimately making decisions. So this creates the fragmented intelligence gap. There's fragmented ISR ecosystem, there's fragmented data integration, and then there's an absolute need for integrating all of these data sets and emphasizing decision making. And so this is where the industry is going. And for anyone considering a career in intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, or even in military aviation, these are the three areas where we can all make a difference, where we can contribute to an integrated intelligence solution that ultimately creates a better product. So this is all, I'll say, informed by major changes that are being made in defense acquisition. So late last year, the defense secretary announced a new warfighting acquisition system, and it's really focused on speed and fielding what he would call good enough capabilities. In the past, and this was most of my career, we would be given a set of requirements. Those requirements would be labeled as threshold requirements, meaning you have to meet all threshold requirements before your system would be accepted into the Department of Defense or the Department of War. And there would be a set of what would be called objective requirements, which were requirements above and beyond the threshold requirements. And if you committed to delivering on an objective requirement, you couldn't ultimately deliver your system until you met all of those requirements. It was validated and verified through a testing program, and it added time and it added significant cost. Now where the Department of War is going is focusing on the 85% solution with the intent to get capability into the hands of the warfighter faster and reducing cost for U.S. taxpayers. In addition to that, the Department of War has doubled down on their commitment to drones. I'd say largely this has been informed by current conflicts around the world, and namely the Russia-Ukraine war, where drones have been deployed in a very different way than they have ever been deployed in the past. And so now where the Department of War is going is ensuring that at the squad level, drones are part of the arsenal for every single Army squad with at least one small one-way attack drones. Then they're focused on large-scale procurement, where the Army intends to buy 1 million drones in the next 2 to 3 years, versus today they buy 50,000 a year. So a significant increase in the number of drones that they're going to be procuring. And there's a strategic shift that's following this, where before, when the U.S. Army, the U.S. Marine Corps, when they would procure a drone, they viewed it as a system that had a life of 3 to 5 years. Now the focus is on expendable items, meaning that these are low-cost systems that very likely have a single mission in them. And so this reduces the cost, but it significantly increases I'll say the ability to collect data and not have to write a report when you lose a drone. And then separate their focus on faster acquisition, speeding up the time that it takes to acquire systems. And specifically in the Army, they're working on much larger drone initiatives with a goal of fielding drones to every division in some capacity by the end of it's now by the end of this year. So we're seeing that there's a significant commitment to intelligence gathering apparatuses, a significant commitment to fielding a good enough solution, and a focus on ultimately reducing cost. And then lastly, there's a focus on AI. So what we're seeing is a rapid adoption of AI within the Department of War and really across the U.S. government and allied governments around the world, where their focus is not AI as I'll say a fancy search engine, but more importantly, AI as an applied artificial intelligence, meaning using AI to interpret and make faster decisions in support of a warfighting effect. So what is the solution? This is our approach, ultimately creating a unified intelligence platform. So when I started this presentation, I talked about that worldview as a stratospheric balloon company. Where we're headed is integrating all of these domains and delivering an integrated solution to our customers. And we call this unified intelligence. So whereas today we collect intelligence from the stratosphere, we now have UAVs as part of our collect system. So we operate stratospheric balloons and we operate UAVs. And in the future, we'll add spacecraft with a LEO constellation to our tool set so that we can take advantage of the fact that there is a common set of tools related to tasking, processing, exploitation, and dissemination. Really the only difference is having different collect platforms. So if the value stream is task, then collect, then process, then exploit, then disseminate, having multiple collect platforms, using the same tasking tools, using the same processing tools, using the same exploitation tools and dissemination tools. Ultimately, we solve the problem for the customer where we're integrating all of that data into one common ISR ecosystem. And this is what it will look like in the future. I shared with you what we do with stratospheric balloons. What we do today and in the future is collect data with stratospheric balloons, UAVs, using common sensors, all in support of the same mission sets and using the same analytic tool sets and AI-enabled processing. And it's a significant shift, right? So, if you think about, what happens today with, essentially disseminated platforms where a satellite is collecting data and sending it to a ground station, then separately a stratospheric balloon is collecting data, or a drone or a UAV is collecting data and sending it all back. What we've done is created an insights engine where a customer will define the objective. We'll use our AI-enabled insights engine to task a space asset, task a stratospheric balloon, task a UAV or a drone, and connect those taskings in a way that ultimately delivers on a unique objective for a customer. And what it ultimately looks like is an AI-enabled TC-PED tool set where we're immediately identifying patterns and recognizing unique threats. We're providing real-time data. We're providing immediate data collection around the world and doing active, what we call in situ decision-making, in situ meaning in place. And ultimately, the ability to immediately retask platforms and do onboard processing with AI tool sets that speed decisions from days into minutes. And then when we look at the use cases, there's a number of different use cases in national security, a number of different use cases in maritime domain awareness. And one of the mission sets that I'm really excited about is methane emissions detection, where we're able to collect methane data from space, the stratosphere, and UAVs, and ultimately identify significant leaks in oil and gas infrastructure. And we take it all the way to the point where we're not just alerting a customer to the presence of methane, but we detect methane. We identify the size of a methane leak. We identify the source of that methane leak. And then we go all the way to writing a work order and delivering that work order to the person who's supposed to repair that leak. So, in the last year, when we've done methane detection, it would take weeks for us to identify the presence of methane, and then for a customer to take action. Today, with AI-enabled agents operating on all of the platforms, we go from detecting a methane leak, identifying it as a problem, and delivering a work order to the person who has to take action against this leak in minutes. And so when we think about it just from an environmental point of view, the fact that we can eliminate 2 weeks of methane entering the atmosphere, that is a radically improved future, one that I'm really excited about. And so the future of ISR looks like this. There's a shift to perspective-driven ISR, where it's moving away from platform-centric approaches. It's focusing on decision-ready intelligence at the speed of a mission. It's interconnected intelligence, so it's not segregated platforms collecting disparate data. It's all integrated and coordinated, and ultimately shaping the next era of collaboration between industry, the government, and technology innovators in a way that ultimately shapes both the commercial remote sensing market and the defense intelligence market. So that's my presentation for today. And I'm sure there's lots of different questions, and we can go anywhere you want with your questions, but excited to have a conversation here.
Great. Hey, thank you very much, Ryan. I appreciate your presentation and the information that you provided us there. We do have a good number of questions that have already started to roll in. First, I love this idea of being able to take the big data that's coming out of multiple sources, digest it down into information, because that was one of the huge issues that I know when I was deployed. The data overload, the tyranny of data that we would have, and trying to make sense of all of this different information that was coming down the line. So a great opportunity there. One question there, as we're applying AI to this data, what is the percentage of times that you end up with a false positive or a false negative when it comes to this AI interpretation of the data?
So it depends on the specific mission set. So I'll say when we're applying this to commercial mission sets like methane detection, we bias it towards a false positive versus a false negative. There's no harm in having a false positive where someone is deployed to fix a leak, and if the leak is smaller than what we interpreted, it's still a leak that's fixed. There is no false positive in detecting methane. There is a false positive in the amount of methane that we're detecting, right? So we bias it towards a false positive on the commercial side. And this is in alignment with the idea of a radically improved future, where I think we would all agree that the less methane being emitted into the atmosphere, the better for everybody. On the defense side, it's not binary. It's not a false positive versus a false negative. Rather, the approach that we're required to take is a percentage of confidence, right? And then the decision makers can use that percentage of confidence to determine whether or not they're going to take action on it. So for example, if let's say we were detecting. Well, I'll use I'd say something we're all familiar with in the news today. And I don't want this to become political. This is just focused on the idea of collecting intelligence and providing intelligence to a customer. But there are a number of different boats that operate in the Gulf of America. And what's important is to identify those that could do harm to the U.S. And what happens in the Gulf of America? There's a number of different fishing vessels. There's a number of different shipping vessels, and then there are also those that are intending to smuggle narcotics into the U.S. or do other harm to the U.S. And so there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of vessels operating in the Gulf of America at any given time. And so what's important is to collect all of them and deliver each of those as an individual track to the customer community with a confidence level. And if it's a low confidence level, let's say it's a 10% confidence level, that means that the customer is going to take additional action. They're going to work to get that to a level of 100%. And so they'll deploy additional assets, maybe a UAV, maybe a surface vehicle, to increase that confidence level to 100%. Or let's say we produce something that is a 90% confidence level. At that point, they'll still deploy another asset to increase that to 100%, but it's going to be a lot faster and a lot fewer resources to be able to improve that to 100%. So kind of to summarize the answer there, if it's commercial, we bias towards false positives. If it's working in the defense market, our job is to provide a confidence level and then to support the customer in increasing that to 100%. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, that was great. I appreciate it. That answers exactly what we were looking for there. Thank you. Would you have, let's run to a couple of questions. I see that Sharika, is that how I pronounce the name? has a question that she's typed in asking about the flexibility of plans on a flight that's already been scheduled. So let's say that a customer asks for a flight that's going to be 10 days, but instead they switch it to 12 days. Are you able to accommodate that? And how much planning does that take to be able to make those adjustments?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in two different ways. So the way that our company operates is focused on operating a fleet of stratospheric balloons, meaning we have a number of different assets, airborne, that can be tasked individually, or we as a company can be tasked. So, if we have, in an area, let's say we have 5 balloons operating, and a customer says, we need an additional 2 days of intelligence gathering in an area. We'll assess the health of the fleet, and then identify which of the 5 assets make sense to be retasked to collect an additional 2 days of intelligence. So from a fleet perspective, we manage that because at the end of the day, we're a data services company where ultimately the product that we're producing is intelligence. If it's a single balloon, and sometimes we have customers that will pay for a single flight, and they want an additional 2 days. As the question was asked, it's quite easy for us to identify how we would respond to that, and what our confidence level is of being able to provide that additional 2 days. We can take that tasking in real time, and run our tools to replan the mission for an additional 2 days, and then provide a customer with updated pricing or updated timing of data and things like that. So because we're not reliant on fuel, we're simply reliant on stratospheric winds. Being able to extend a mission or even shorten a mission is very feasible for a stratospheric balloon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. This dovetails right into another question, which is if you do get a spur of the moment request for ISR support, how long is the time period? I'm assuming that would depend on what location that what it's needed from, but what is in general the time frame to be able to request to launch or request to observation?
Yeah. So again, I'll answer this from two different business model approaches. When we're operating a fleet, the intent is to launch systems and pre-position them to where we know there's demand, right? So, so we will launch a system without a customer even on contract, and be in a position where we know there's going to be demand. And even if that demand isn't translated into a contract, a business development tool that is at our disposal is to go collect data and then take that data and that intelligence to a customer and say, I have this data, do you want to buy it? And it goes back to what I was saying before, that data is the new oil, right? There's always going to be a consumer of that data. And so, taking a risk, collecting data, and then going to a customer and asking them if they want to buy it is one way that we can do that. But if it were a customer that said, I have a very unique location and I need one of your assets over a location where we don't have a current asset and it's going to require a bespoke flight, there's a number of different hurdles we have to jump through. The first is regulatory approval. So we have to get approval from the FAA to launch a system to transit through the national airspace to get into the stratosphere. Typically that the FAA quotes 30 days. We can get that approval in as little as a week, but that's the first hurdle. You have to get regulatory approval. And then separately, we have to have acceptable launch weather conditions. So winds on the surface need to be less than 10 knots. And then the winds through the troposphere need to support the ability for us to get into the stratosphere in a position where we can navigate to an objective, right? So we're constantly monitoring that. It used to take us, a week to 2 weeks to do that analysis. Using AI tools today, it takes us minutes to do that analysis, so that we can determine a good launch day and a good launch location. And that's one of the decision points that we use. Is if it's an urgent mission, the variable that we have is where we launch from. Most of our launches, we launch from here in Tucson, Arizona, from Spaceport Tucson. And that gives us the ability to launch from a facility co-located with our manufacturing. And so the first thing we look at is, can we launch from Tucson and get to the objective? If the answer is no, then we'll start looking at where we can launch from, in different places around the U.S. or even globally. We just stood up a facility in Australia that gives us, more ready access to the southern hemisphere, and so we'll do the analysis, based on Tucson, based on Alice Springs, Australia, and determine whether it makes sense for us to launch from here, to launch from Australia, or someplace different than that. So when a customer comes to us, we'll say we need a minimum of a week. It could be as long as 30 days.
All right, thank you. Next question goes into kind of dovetails into the methane area. I know when I worked with AFRICOM and USAID, one of the big areas that we had concern with were illicit trade operations that were going on in the African continent, and one of those was charcoal production
Yep.
and the environmental effects that were happening there in addition to the illicit trade. Is that something that Worldview has the ability to detect with their systems?
Yes. So we haven't done that exact mission, but we do have the ability to detect those kinds of emissions. We do that with hyperspectral imaging. So you can't detect it in just electro-optical or infrared. You have to do hyperspectral, where you're capturing data in a multitude of the spectrum, and then integrating those different spectrum returns into a signature for the type of emission that you're looking for. And that requires a lot of processing. Processing hyperspectral data. When we're doing a hyperspectral collection, we're collecting about a terabyte of data per hour. And processing a terabyte of data is a significant amount of data to work through. This is where AI is a huge game changer for us. But hyperspectral is really the mode that we use for detecting any kind of emission-related in a mission set. And this speaks to methane detection or other kinds of emissions. There's absolutely a commercial application to it. But to Dr. Ross's point, detecting things that have a damaging consequence on the environment, it's not just a commercial application. It is a global defense application. So AFRICOM, CENTCOM, they're all very interested in illicit activities that not just put people at harm through direct engagement, but but detecting activities that have a negative impact on all of us. And so that's a great one to bring up.
Talking about this hyperspectral area, what are some of the greatest challenges that you see as you're even today and moving forward, both on the operational and on the engineering front?
Well, I'll start with the engineering front. There's not a lot of companies that do what we do. And as much as I would like for schools like Embry-Riddle to have a stratospheric ballooning curriculum, it doesn't exist. There are certainly subjects that contribute to somebody being able to step into stratospheric ballooning. But our our engineering challenges are very different than aircraft and space assets. The physics are very different with what we do. One might think that ballooning is simple, it's easy. It's not. It is by far the most challenging aerospace project that I've ever been involved in. And I have been involved in a lot of other very challenging ones, but this is by far the most challenging one that I've ever been involved in. And so there's things like thermal dynamics and the ability to design subsystems that can operate in the stratosphere where, during the day, we're experiencing radiant heat of close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and at night we're experiencing cold of minus 100, and not a lot of air for cooling, and not a lot of power available for heating, right? So when we design systems, we design them in a way that requires minimal cooling and minimal heating. The physics associated with buoyancy in the stratosphere, and that is ultimately, the design of the balloon, even the shape of the balloon, ultimately determines how high you can go and how low you can go. And so, designing balloons is something that's very unique. We have all the standard, engineering challenges of any aerospace project. And then we have very unique challenges that we have to address in the design of our systems and subsystems. And then the first part of your question was more of an operational one. Is that right, Dr. Rouse?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So, I'm proud that to say that a good number of our mission control operators are Embry-Riddle alumni. So, when we look at operating our systems, typically a stratospheric balloon pilot or mission director, there's somebody who has an engineering background so that they can understand the system, and they have a very good understanding of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance and remote sensing. And the challenges are, related to how you control the system to stay over an area, how you control the system to navigate from point A to point B to point C, and so on. AI helps a lot with this, but AI doesn't replace an operator. It just changes the information that's presented to them and presents it to them faster. There's other challenges, regulatory challenges. The stratosphere is not very well understood. The FAA doesn't know how to deal with us. So essentially what they do is they keep a very close tabs on us as we're transiting through the national airspace. And once we're in the stratosphere, they just tell us to call them when we have a problem. I think that's going to change over time. I hope it changes over time. But the reality is they don't even know how to deal with us. And so they want us to just go away, so they don't have to think about us until they need to think about us.
Well, great. Your answer there actually answered another question that we had, which was looking at the pilots and mission operators. What were the qualities and degrees that you're looking for individuals to go into that area? So thank you for that. We are just about out of time, but one question that's come up a couple of times is the idea of trust and for the information that's coming down the line, both on a cultural aspect by different regions. And also by an organizational culture. Are you seeing, what are you seeing that helps to increase the trust level of the information that's being provided?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing I'll say is that we never overfly a country without permission, right? And that's a very important thing for us that builds trust in us operating our systems globally, is that we're always working with host nation governments to ensure that we have permission to fly, even though we could overfly using ICAO or other rules available to us that would enable us to overfly. We don't want to be the Chinese balloon over another country, right? That's really, really important to us. And then as it relates to, I'll say, trust even within, I'll say, societal trust. So I've experienced this even with UAVs and drones. Most of my 27-year career in aerospace and defense has been in drones, unmanned aircraft, and stratospheric balloons. And so you have to have a code of conduct of how you operate these systems, what kind of data you collect, and what do you do with that data. So there are codes of conduct for unmanned systems that we abide by, which means when we're overflying areas, we don't take the opportunity to look in people's backyards or look into areas that we shouldn't be looking. And this is a cultural norm, not a regulatory norm. It's not a law that we have to abide by. It's literally, what do we choose to do? And what we choose to do is be good stewards of the ability to collect information, and only collect information that's going to contribute to why we exist. That we exist to inspire, create, and explore new perspectives for a radically improved future. If it doesn't create a new perspective in support of a radically improved future, that data is of no interest to us. And that has to be embedded in our culture. It's something we have to talk about. It's part of the training program for our sensor operators and for our stratospheric balloon pilots, that this is not like a glorified Google Earth where you go look at all the places that have interest to you. Rather, unless there is data to be collected for a customer, the camera doesn't need to be on.
Great answer there that covered both the idea of those cultural aspects and the moral and ethical implications of having these sustained observation platforms at multiple areas around the world. Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time today. We're getting now to the top of the hour. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk with us. If there is one last parting thing that you would like to share with the attendees today, what would that one bit of advice or information be?
Yeah, considering this is a focus on careers and the opportunities that exist. I will tell you, just from a personal point of view, that I have gotten great fulfillment in working on solutions that make a difference. And I could spend an entire hour sharing stories where our technology saved lives. And there's nothing more fulfilling than having experienced that. And I'll actually share one story, if that's okay. It'll just take me a minute, Dr. Ross. So when I was leading in situ, the security guard at our building, he came back to my office and he said, "Hey, there's a woman in the lobby that asked if she could give you a hug." And I said, "Well, that's an interesting request." And so I asked him a few questions. Did he think that it was a legitimate request, and did he see any threat there? And he said, "No, she seemed very genuine and authentic in her request for a hug." So I walked out into the lobby, and as soon as I walked into the lobby, the woman grabbed me and gave me a big hug. And I said, to what honor am I receiving this hug? And she said, "Well, I just got off the phone with my son. My son is a young Marine. He was just deployed to Afghanistan. He just returned from his first mission in Afghanistan, which was a resupply mission to take materials to an outpost. In the middle of this resupply mission, they were in a convoy of vehicles. They found themselves in the middle of an ambush. And so all the vehicles were stopped. There was hills on either side of them. They were taking gunfire from both sides. And what they had in front of them were these systems called rovers, where they were getting a top-down view of themselves. And so they could see with great clarity where they were. They could see where the gunfire was coming from. They were able to take cover, get through that ambush without any casualties, and just move on. And so this young Marine said, "Where was that video coming from?" And they said, "Oh, that was coming from a Scan Eagle. We'd never go on a mission like this without a Scan Eagle, and that's why." So he got back to Kandahar after the mission, and he looked up Scan Eagle. What is a Scan Eagle? And he learned that it was an unmanned aircraft that was produced by this company in situ in his hometown of Bingen, Washington. And so he called his parents, from source of pride saying, hey, you know that company that we've seen the logo says in situ? This is what they do. And this was an amazing story. And I would never advise a young Marine to call their parents and say, hey, I was just in the middle of an ambush and we got out of it, but et cetera. But he was just saying it from a source of pride. His mom immediately hung up the phone, drove her car to in situ, and wanted to give me a hug. And I share that because from my point of view, there are technologies that you can point to that save lives. And I spoke a lot about intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance and remote sensing. But this work is important. So if you're considering what you might be able to contribute your skills to, there's nothing more fulfilling than producing something that has a radically improved future impact on people. So I share that with you. I wish I would have learned something like that very, very early on in my career. And it's something I enjoy sharing with students and with people early in their career, because you'll get no better satisfaction than learning of just one life that you have had a positive impact and potentially saved their life.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Ryan, for that. And that is an inspiring a story as to what is your purpose in life? What is the purpose beyond making a livelihood for yourself? And it's helping others. It's helping society, and it's helping make the world a better place. So thank you for that. As we end today's presentation, I'd like to highlight that we do have some upcoming presentations in the near future. Just 2 days away, we have navigating security clearances, where we'll have on this same format. And then coming up on the 12th of February, we have Journey with Blue Origin with ERAU alumni Kayla Elish, that's coming up in just a month away. So Ryan, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule today. Appreciate it. And without anything further there, I'll hand it off to Arnold if you have any last comments before the end of today's webinar.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you again, Dr. Rouse, what a wonderful presentation. We appreciate all of those who join, and we have many, many more questions, and I'm sure that we can maybe get those answered as well. But again, thank you so much for your time. This was just phenomenal. So thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. And this session will be available. It has been recorded, should be available within about 24 to 48 hours. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Joel.
Eric, thank you so much. This was just awesome.